Part 3 of the Electoral College, particularly convincing you that we require to remove the Electoral College in order to put forward progressive policies such as rent control, social housing. That was part 1. Part 2, we were capable of categorizing the Electoral College not as constitutionalism, so not as a part of American tradition, but originalism, which is just basically an experiment that our founding fathers wanted to do, and it was a compromise, because at the core, without the 3/5 compromise, without the Electoral College, the states would not agree to ratify the United States Constitution. So it was truly just, if we don't position this, then we won't gain a new constitution. And we as our American founding fathers knew that we required a stronger central government. So they were willing to give up political rights and even democracy and a reality to move forward a much stronger central government. To understand why, we have to understand the backdrop of why the United States Constitution was moved forward, why the Articles of Confederation, our first constitution, was dissolved, and it's because of the impact of Shays' Rebellion. This was 1786 and 1787. 1787 is when our founding fathers came together and said, we need a new constitution, because the Articles of Confederation had a weak central government, and the Constitution was going to introduce a stronger central government. During Shays' Rebellion, former revolutionary soldiers were really just fucking pissed off because they were getting their homes foreclosed, they were in debt, the banks weren't extending credits, so they were just really fucking pissed. So they were just protesting and ensuring that the courts were incapable of foreclosing homes, of forcing people to pay their debts. And what the government realized is that it happened in Massachusetts, but the federal government were incapable of mobilizing an actual militia. We didn't have a militia because the Articles of Confederation made sure that the federal government was weak. Why? Because if the federal government is weak, then the state government is extremely powerful. And when you look at it right now, the states are always complaining about federal government overreach. But think about it. You know what's federal government overreach? Minimum wage. A living wage would also be federal government overreach. You being required to get like lunch and breaks and stuff like that, and restroom breaks, that is federal government overreach. So technically speaking, federal government overreach doesn't necessarily have to be bad. But there's always been this rivalry between the federal government and the state government, and that was inherited from the Articles of Confederation to the United States Constitution. But the main thing that it exposed, Shays' Rebellion, was that the lack of federal unity and the abuse of power the states could hold over its citizens' basic rights. Which, when we look at it now, this is still a problem because states are capable of violating basic rights of citizens, and the executive has no control over safeguarding that. The courts are supposed to say, hey, states, what you're doing is illegal, but of course, they're very conservative, so they're going to go in alignment with the party that they have a loyalty to, which isn't what they should, because the Constitution is what the courts should be positioning. But we don't do that, right? But truly, what I like to say is that it seems like the creation of the United States Constitution was created as a way to safeguard the government from the power of the people, because Shays' Rebellion proved that the people had power, and we had to quell that somehow. And no Federalist paper illustrates this more. Federalist 51 was written by either James Madison or Alexander Hamilton. We're quite not sure. However, it literally positions under originalism the preference for the government to use divide and conquer strategy in order to filter out passions within the people, in order to ensure that there is not sufficient energy to mobilize against the government. Mad because we should have the freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech, but this positions that it could be the fact that, yes, the Constitution was written a certain way where it says we the people, but through originalism, we the people means we the representatives, we the founding fathers, which isn't constitutional. However, it positions that in interpreting our reality in Congress and our courts through originalism, it's positioning the opinions of voices that is not actually our contract. See, in Federalist 51, it positions, if a majority be united by a common interest, the rights of the minority will be insecure. Now, that just seems like common sense, you know? It really does. And in a way, it is really beneficial in certain ways that we do have some sort of republicanism element, because when you think of the separation of church and state, there's plenty of Americans who believe that because it doesn't say separation of church and state that we are religious. So just imagine if for every single thing we had to vote as individuals, and then whoever got majority, that would be move forward. But you have to filter that out through constitutionalism. The problem is that our Congress people should be capable of deciphering that and having the intellect to position that. But I don't think everyone in government actually knows what constitutionalism is. But within this context, the reality is that they're thinking of Shays Rebellion, the fact that because people who were being exploited through the private sphere were pushing back, it means that the security of the economic stability will be insecure. There are but two methods of providing against this evil. The one by creating a will in the community independent of the majority that is of the society itself. Now, this is preferred. In 1788, which is when this was written, they didn't actually have a good doctrine. The Articles of Confederation failed, so they could not position this first one. So they went for the second one. The other, by comprehending in the society so many separate descriptions of citizens as will render an unjust combination of a majority of the whole very improbable, if not impractical. Think about that, okay? By comprehending in the society so many separate descriptions of citizens as will render an unjust combination of a majority of the whole very improbable, if not impractical. This means divide and conquer is the solution in order to make sure that people will not mobilize together, that people will not have those platforms in order to organize against something such as the government. Overwork us because then we won't have any time, right? It's forcing us to be so divided that we're incapable of uniting. And this is where there's a paradox, okay? Because it says, whilst all authority in it will be derived from and dependent on the society itself will be broken into so many parts, interests, and classes of citizens that the rights of individuals or of the minority will be in little danger from interested combinations of the majority. So truly, the Electoral College is literally just a conservatorship in order to filter out our votes for presidency so that the state Congress can still have a sort of official capacity to determine the presidency, however, not directly. It's wild. The Electoral College is the greatest pillar that disenfranchises citizens because its existence removes any incentive for individuals to actually go out and vote. And that's truly the purpose, according to originalism. The purpose is to ensure that the people do not mobilize for the common interest. That means putting obstacles instead of extending rights. You're regulating them. You're making sure that people are fighting. You're making sure that people are divided, because then the power of the government will always be protected. The Electoral College serves as a maintainer of the political status quo, and without removing it, we're incapable of achieving anything better, because our votes will always be controlled by state Congress.